Welcome to SOSA. Thank you for joining. We'll begin shortly. Welcome to SOSA. Thank you for joining. We'll begin shortly. Welcome to SOSA. Thank you for joining. We'll begin shortly. Welcome to SOSA. Thank you for joining. We'll begin shortly. Welcome to SOSA. Thank you for joining. We'll begin shortly. Welcome to SOSA. Thank you for joining. We'll begin shortly.
Good morning, everyone. So happy that everyone could join us today. We're still giving everyone just a second to log on and get their screens in order. I think we are ready to go. So welcome. Welcome to today's panel discussion on the future of cybersecurity in the age of rapid digital transformation. My name is William Altman. I'm a senior analyst here at SOSA in New York City, and I'll be moderating our discussion today. For those of you who don't know, at SOSA, we work with corporations and governments to execute open innovation strategies. And these strategies lead to buying, partnering, and investing in the right startups and new technologies. So, on a recent earnings call, Microsoft CTO Satya Nadella said that his company has seen 2 years worth of digital transformation efforts in just 2 months of their third quarter. So from the sudden shift to remote first workforces, to pivoting sales, software development, and customer support, and nearly every operation to online channels, it's becoming clear that we are in the age of rapid digital transformation. And alongside that rapid transformation comes new and unforeseen cybersecurity challenges as well as opportunities. And it is precisely those challenges and opportunities that lie in front of us that we are about to explore today. So I'm really excited to share this panel with you. We have such an esteemed group of people that bring tremendous breadth and depth of experience to the industry, and I just can't wait to dive in. We'll be hearing from Sharon Schusheim, the Vice President of Information Services at the multinational publicly traded cybersecurity company Check Point. We'll be hearing from Eric Singer, the Chief Information Security Officer for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa at the Fortune Global 500 company Schneider Electric. And we'll also hear from Joel de la Garza, a veteran CISO and a current operating partner at Andreessen Horowitz, one of the world's most successful venture capital firms. So let's start with a quick round just to get to know our panelists and a little bit more about where they're coming from so we can really inform the discussion we're about to have. And I'd love to start with Joel, if that's all right with you. Maybe you could just give us a sense of your background and what you do currently in your role at A16Z.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. So my background is pretty much exclusively information security. It's something I started in college. I left college and worked at a bunch of startups and helped get a bunch of things going, and then transitioned to financial services where I worked at Deutsche Bank and Citigroup. And then from there went back to startup land with Box and was lucky enough to go through an IPO, and then decided to come over to the venture side. And basically I'm responsible for sort of all things information security for the firm. So I help advise and counsel our portfolio companies. And then I also work on kind of helping build a landscape and a roadmap for where we think security is going, so that we can help sort of align all the different teams along where that arc is, looking at technologies that are interesting for the firm, and potentially for future investments.
Wow, very interesting. Excited to hear from you today, Joel. Thanks for joining us. So we'll move to Sharon. Sharon, tell us a little bit about your background and your current role at Check Point.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So my name is Sharon, and I'm the today I hold two positions at Check Point. I'm the CIO and also VP for Technical Services. So in these two roles, I serve 100,000 external customers and about 5,500 internal customers. Half of my background, or half of my history, is in sales and marketing. And recent years at Check Point started in sales and marketing and moved to technical services and then to run the IT organization.
Great, wonderful. Thanks for joining us. Eric, you're up. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for your time. So I'm in the field of cybersecurity for 25 years now, and I've been working for telecom operator, for manufacturer. I was an internal auditor, and then I worked for the National Cybersecurity Authority in France, the ANSSI, and I've been created the 24/7 watch and crisis management for this nice organization. And then I've been CISO for different companies like retailers, like Galeries Lafayette, for industries like Andreessen, and for Orano, and for services like AK Technology. And now I'm working as the CISO for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for Schneider Electric.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Awesome. Now that we have a little bit of an idea of where each of us is coming from, let's get down to business. So I'll start with you, Sharon. Check Point is one of the largest security vendors in the world, and that means that the company has extensive and global cybersecurity intelligence coverage. So can you tell us a little bit, just to get us going here, what are you seeing today from a threat perspective that we should all know? And specifically, are you seeing threats that directly exploit some of our new vulnerabilities due to the COVID-19 situation?
Sure. I don't see anything specifically new, but I see a shift in the focus of the attacks. Shift and increase in the volume. We see actually a dramatic increase in the number of COVID-19 related cybersecurity attacks. Over this period, we are identifying about 2,600 attacks on a daily basis, which has peaked to 20,000 attacks somewhere in April. Since the beginning, since January, we see something like 65 to 70,000 new attacks. 90% of these attacks are mainly phishing attacks. So the fact that that enterprises have migrated to work from home, the focus goes to the masses. It goes to the people that work from home, whether they use corporate resources as mobile devices or laptops, or they use their bring your own device devices. Naturally, with the huge popularity of Zoom, we see a trend of increased number of Zoom-related websites. We saw about 1,700 new domains related to Zoom, out of which 70 were considered as a suspicious domain, which represents a major attack behind them. And then, as I mentioned, mobile devices. We also see applications, malicious applications, that are masking themselves as a corona-related applications. We actually discovered 16 malicious applications that were trying to steal user-sensitive information, masking themselves as corona applications. Apart to the mass attacks, we also started to see APTs on organizations that moved fast, that created new environment and new topologies that allowed their people to work from home. And now we now see APTs trying to take advantage of these changes that were made in a hurry and not necessarily address all the security concerns. So that's in short.
Thanks, Sharon. Now, Eric, let's move to you. Keeping in mind what Sharon has said about some of the different threats they're seeing in the wild, you know, you're experiencing this digitization firsthand, not only in the fact that Schneider Electric is its own large company, but you're also servicing customers all over the world and their digitization efforts. So tell us, what are some of the challenges today that CISOs are experiencing? What are you seeing out there?
Yes, thanks. This is exactly that. You know, at Schneider Electric, let's speak about this company because it is also what is it about here. We are leading the digital transformation of energy management and automation for our customers. And this is key here. We are believing that power and digital together create the foundation of life, education, progress, and performance. And today, you know, we are facing two major disruptions, two technology disruptions, which is energy transition and digital transition. And this is key for our business. So if we look at the energy transition, disruption, we believe change is possible, but we have only 20 years to change the trajectory. We need to save, electrify, decarbonize. This is the equation we have in front of us. Now let's speak about the digital innovation disruption that we faced since several years. Maybe you remember in the 90s or 80s, we got our first internet connection. I remember this. And it was a big change. It has totally changed our world. The way we work, the way we live, the way we communicate. With the first iPhone, the way we order food, the way we transport ourselves. And then 5 years ago, we had the second episode of the internet revolution. It was connection machine to people and then connection machine to machine. This is the IoT, the Internet of Things. And what has done internet for us, now it is doing for our business. As you can see that with the 5G application in our buildings, in the manufacturing environment, we are going to have an acceleration cycle with more products connected to IoT, going to big data. We have more storage to the cloud, more big data centers, and we're going to deploy and accelerate artificial intelligence. So this is key. And it is coming with cybersecurity, for sure. Because since the 90s, we came from information security system officer to chief information security officer, and we were part of those innovation and revolution. This is a challenging and a very exciting moment, and we have faced new trends, new risks, new revolution like outsourcing with less controls, like the arrival of cloud with less control on the application. And we face new regulation like GDPR, for instance. But now it's coming to digitization of objects. And this is a big revolution of everything we are going to do. And security is in the center of this new revolution. And because cybersecurity gives trust, this is the digital trust we need to give. It is the basis how to operate business in our open and connected digital world. And I think in the following discussion, I will explain how we are doing this with our customer, internally also within Schneider.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Very interesting. We'll come back to a lot of that. It's great points that you've made. So let's turn to Joel. Joel, you have such a unique position. You see the market and its development in terms of these overarching trends. And I'm wondering if you can sort of lay out for us, kind of in your perspective, where the market's been and where it's headed, and especially keeping in mind this current situation that we're in.
Yeah, so I think that the COVID situation it hasn't necessarily created new trends. What it's done is accelerate trends that are already underway and accelerate some trends pretty significantly. So I think with the deployment of people fully work from home, right, we've been talking about this concept of zero trust since I think it was 1998 in like a Forrester research paper was kind of the first mention of it. And the idea was always that at some point, the concept of a corporate office goes away. And the idea that we have this office that we go into goes away. And that's been happening over time, right? Like Citigroup, when I was there, started to have a lot of people work remotely. We had a lot of VPN technology. We had the emergence of cloud. And then we had COVID, which basically made 100% of the workforce that could remotely work. And so that was kind of a really big shift that happened. Another shift that's happening as a result of COVID is that when you're living in a city that has a shelter-in-place order, getting your employees into a data center becomes very difficult. And so we could start to see sort of the need to move a lot of these facilities to cloud, a bigger shift to cloud, right? Even though cloud has been around for 15, 16 years, whatever the case is, adoption's still been fairly nascent. And so we've seen an acceleration in the shift to cloud. We've seen a shift in the consumerization or the drive of consumerization of apps. So now that folks aren't in the office, they don't have access to their tools. They're basically self-provisioning using freemium or cloud services. All of these things are driving tremendous changes in the way that we think about security and the way that we kind of address and react to it.
Great. Thanks, Joel. That's really important, I think, for us all to take that kind of step back and understand sort of context, you know, the fact that a lot of these challenges are things we have been dealing with, but the situation right now has been an accelerant for a lot of those challenges. And it's really interesting. We'll dive a little bit more into what you talked about around cloud adoption in just a little bit. It's an important issue. I want to go back to Sharon here and just talk a little bit more about some of these human element threats. You mentioned phishing is such an important attack vector for the bad guys to get into the network. What are you seeing there specifically with regards to phishing? How sophisticated are these threats? Are we seeing advanced, persistent, long-term challenges, or are we seeing really sort of one-off opportunistic kind of attacks? Maybe a mix.
I see. Well, to answer your first half of the question, we see a very sophisticated phishing attacks, but not APTs. We see mass phishing attacks. Things that makes you think that there's a lot of chances that you would fail, certainly.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and then obviously we're not talking about necessarily the educated consumer. And the question that you ask yourself as a CISO is it something that you can train your organization? Is it something that you can train your internal employee? And you know, I have a saying: at Checkpoint we bring all new recruiters on a Monday, and they go through a day of onboarding, and they start at 9 o'clock and they finish at 6 o'clock, and their second presentation is security awareness, like the second presentation when they start. But the joke that I make about this day is that if at the end of the day they remember how to order food, we're lucky. I I'm not a strong believer in the success of awareness of security awareness campaigns. And our philosophy at Checkpoint is that the way you want to address that is by a combination of engaging your user, engaging your customer, and creating a safety net. Engaging means that they don't need to remember what they were told on that Monday when they joined. But if you find that they might do something wrong, then you alert them and you ask them if they really want to go through this. And you never block them from doing something without explaining them. This is where we believe you need to meet your customer in order to make them aware, and that's true also for phishing attacks. So one of our solution is a browser add-on that would not allow you to put your credentials in a website unless we've scrutinized and made sure that this is not a phishing website. And if by mistake I used my AD credentials in somewhere else outside of Checkpoint, like in my bank account, then this is the safety net. Here, I will get an alert that will tell me, listen, you've used your credentials somewhere else, and you need to change your AD credentials. So that's an example to an awareness, which is a combination again of engaging the user and a combination of a safety net, if you wish. So that's a long answer to phishing attacks, but they are sophisticated.
Sure, it is a big problem. And I like how you broke it out into multiple solutions. A lot of times people say, well, let's just put an awareness and training program and all our employees will be equipped with the ability to spot a phishing attack. But it doesn't quite work that way. Does it, Eric?
Good point. Yes, thank you, Sharon, to show us this. In fact, for sure, the human people are the first level of defense. When it comes to cybersecurity, we've got 3 layers. We've got people, technology, and processes. And people is key. And we need to tackle people behavior. And most of the incident I see, it's because of misbehavior of people, unfortunately. So we need to train, and to train again people. This is key. And doing phishing exercise is key also. We are doing phishing exercise to all our employees. Every 3 months, for instance, we are doing this. It is key to do this because, and I like to trap people here because it is how being trapped, they learn from this. And we are doing more and more sophisticated tools to trap them. But it's not good enough. We need also to train people and to aware people. So we've got mandatory trainings. This is a cybersecurity essentials. It is part of Schneider Electric essentials. It is cybersecurity. And every year we are doing a mandatory training for everybody. It is renewed every year to understand and to cope with the new threats. But also we are doing dedicated training for people facing customers. This is key because this is not the same behavior. They need to understand what kind of thing they can do and they can't do. And this is key also that they've got the good behavior and they've got a stamp that they are cyber secure. And with this, they've got the cyber badge. And with this cyber badge, they can go on site, on the customer site. So again, tools are key and we need to have the best tools, but also people are the first level of defense.
Great, thanks, Eric. Now, Joel, I know you're a wealth of information on this topic, so I don't want to box you in with a question. I want to let you go where you want to go on this. But what I'd love to hear about is two things. First, when it comes to security spend and the way people are spending money, CISOs and even venture capitalists and what we're investing in, are we putting our money in the right places in order to deal with this human element of cybersecurity, namely phishing? That's one question. And then the other is, what are you seeing out there that's working?
Yeah, so that's a good one. I'm a firm believer that the markets will sort a lot of that out. So I think that, I think it's really good to kind of make a lot of bets in a lot of different spaces, to invest in a bunch of different technologies, and then to kind of let the market figure it out, right? And security consumers, right? So CISOs and security professionals are generally pretty good about communicating with one another. So when products don't work, you tend to learn pretty quickly. And there's a lot of lively discussion, in some cases bashing of a bunch of different vendors. But when things don't work, they tend to fail pretty publicly, right? And so that's always good, because there's a level of transparency in the market. So I think in terms of capital allocation, if you look over the last 4 years, every year roughly, security has doubled in terms of venture investment in the space. If you look at some of the most recent sort of IPO activity for things like CrowdStrike, like the market's huge, phenomenal IPO, really tremendous multiples. And so I don't think we've ever seen more money being poured into information security, at least not in my lifetime. That said, I could probably say that same thing every year, right? So we tend to put more and more money into security every year. And I would argue that the net effect has been positive, right? So I've been doing this since the mid-90s, and I can tell you that the world is way more safe and secure now than it was back then. Although it doesn't always seem like it, we have way more technology in our lives, but systems are a lot more secure. In the old days, you used to be able to just connect to a server, get access to it, right, without any kind of authentication, and issue commands. Now that process is, for the most part, a little bit more difficult. Obviously, there's edge cases. But what we're seeing, into what the guests are saying earlier, some of the fellow colleagues were saying earlier, is that there's been a pivot from focusing on hacking systems to focusing on hacking people. And if you look at all the data that we see, and you look at the Verizon data breach report, you'll see that like over 90% of all attacks start with some kind of phishing, social engineering type attack, right? And that's essentially just tricking people. It has very little to do with actually hacking your machine. So my overall belief is that over time, these systems become more secure. You don't have to worry so much about it. It becomes something that becomes sort of back of mind instead of front of mind, which is actually what you want, right? The users are historically the weakest link in any security chain. And so in terms of things that are exciting, right? Like, I think the security industry tends to lag a bit behind the rest of the tech industry. So trends that happen in the broader tech market or in the consumer space tend to filter into security, a little bit later. And so what we're starting to see is the application of technologies in the broader IT space trickling down to security. And so you're seeing companies now that are taking things like graph databases, right? And applying graph databases to a variety of different security problems. And that's a pretty interesting application of that technology. You're also seeing people taking machine learning and artificial intelligence and applying it to very specific slices of the security market. For example, instead of creating a generalized AI thing to find bad stuff, they're creating like a machine learning capability to help you with a very specific set of compliance problems, or a very specific set of phishing and targeted attacks around business email compromise. And so those are the things that are kind of interesting when you see these very narrow applications.
Very interesting, Joel. Now, we heard from Sharon a little bit about this balance between, we'll call it training and awareness, direct engagement, and technology or tools. And we know that there is no single silver bullet technology for any security challenge, that there's a mix of strategies. But I would love to hear from all of you today, what sort of technologies or tools are out there that are exciting to you when it comes to the future of defense and making us safer? And Sharon, you can feel free to talk about, how Checkpoint even sees innovation in this space. And when you look at new vendors and things to adopt into your stack, what are the considerations there?
Sure. To Joel's point, just to bring more juice into discussion. I actually believe that the spend on security is increasing, but the security posture is unfortunately not improving, and there's few reasons for that. Number one, the technology that the CIO needs to address are increasing every day. I mean, from his on-prem, from his data center to public data centers from VMs to containers and so on. And each of them brings new needs for security, and also brings 1,000 new solutions. And at the end of the day, none of us have enough human resources nor funding to invest in all of this. It's natural that it's coming from us, a vendor like Checkpoint, but we strongly believe that there needs to be more consolidation in the security that you use, that you cannot implement 35 different security solutions, because there's no way that you have enough time to do that. And more than that, there's no way that you can consolidate all the knowledge from the different solutions to understand what's going on with your security posture.
Certainly.
And these are like very basic things that have become risk factors for us. Any enterprise that moves to the public cloud can make these stupid mistakes of opening an S3 bucket in AWS to the internet, and boom, all your data is out there. This is not like this is a configuration issue that somehow you need to protect yourself from that. To your point, where do we see innovation? We see innovation going to the demand for security in public cloud, with the public cloud vendors coming every 2 weeks with a new service. With this new service comes new potential attack vectors and new needs to cover these attack vectors. And another vector is security embedded in your CI/CD process. An ongoing security posture, and not only after you've developed, after you've launched something, but put security in your CI/CD process. These are two vectors, if I may.
And Sharon, for those of us on the line who aren't familiar, what is CI/CD?
Continuous integration, continuous development, the process of a continuous delivery of an application or a solution.
Great, thank you. Now, Eric, tell us a little bit about, related to what Sharon said, this idea that you can bring on these new tools, but they create their own complications once they're involved. And how do you balance bringing security in line with best practices, but also making sure that you're innovating and including new
Yes.
technologies.
Very good point, and thank you to address this. In fact, it's all about risk. We need to manage the risk of the company. This is the essence of it. So at Schneider, for instance, we've got a risk register, and this risk register embraces all our cybersecurity scope, all our global scope. So it's again not about the tooling, but how we are addressing the risk. We've got a huge attack surface with OT, IoT, partners, and we need to connect the tools. If we are having a new technology, we need to ensure it will integrate with the others, that people will understand how to use it, and we will reduce the risk. So we need to understand and to check with measures that for sure this new tool will reduce the risk. But always, we need not to forget the basics. The basics are vulnerability management, patch management. We need for sure to patch everything we are doing internally, but also the customer must patch the systems. So we need to address this and to help everybody using not vulnerability protocol. This is key, not to use vulnerability protocol. And we need also to have network protections. So we need to get back to the basic, for sure, before going to innovation. Also, we need to have a good incident response process. Incident response is key to address the risk the good way and to react the good way. Without any incident response, without having any CM solution in order to understand the risk and the incident, we are blind and we can't face the attacks and we can't increase the security level of the company.
Great, thanks, Eric. Now, Joel, another two-parter here for you. The first part being, when you hear it's all about risk and it's all about risk management, can you break that down for us? Because it seems fairly obvious you want to lower your risk, but I imagine it's very complex in practice. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about when you hear risk, what that means to you for the enterprise, and then similarly, this idea of emerging or new technologies in cybersecurity. And what are you following? What are you seeing out there?
Sure. So the discussion about risk is interesting. It's something that started, probably more than 10 years ago in terms of the role of the CISO, and that's because that the job has kind of expanded in scope and changed pretty materially over the last couple of years. Security professionals, CISOs, specifically in the very beginning, were overwhelmingly kind of security focused. So focused on the technology of security. Over time, that role expanded, right? It kind of expanded into covering confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And so CISOs now own things like, third-party risk management, right? So like, are our vendors secure, not just the security of their own organization? They own things like business continuity and disaster response, right? So COVID and the shift to work from home put a lot of stress on security teams, not because they were concerned about threats, but because they're also part of the DR and BCP process. And as we've seen kind of security is becoming less of a game about knobs and dials, right? It's not about like, did I pick the right antivirus solution, right? And that was kind of like the classic way that a security program got evaluated. Now it's more about like, do I communicate with the board regularly? Do I capture all of the risks? Have I cataloged them? Are we managing them correctly? And I think what we're seeing is the transition of the security role into sort of more of a generalized professional risk and control officer, right? So the CISO role starts to look more like a chief risk officer role and less like a CIO or a CTO type role where you're down in the codes. I think over time, what's going to happen is that we will have established standards and guidelines for how we run and instrument our environments. We'll have some form of auditing against those standards that runs on a continuous basis. Our devices and the products we buy will be certified for a certain level of security, right? Think of like in the US with the FedRAMP process, where there is a process for certifying based on an open standard developed by our NIST organization. And we'll just start to see a lot of the kind of dark arts behind kind of security disappear. And it'll become something we can measure and something we can talk to very directly. And then we'll start to see the emergence of meaningful risk transfer, right? Cyber insurance, for example, becomes something that can work in a meaningful way. Once we start to understand and quantify those risks, and you'll see the CISO role become more of a chief information risk role, right? It'll be less of a security role and more of an information risk role. And that's probably a transformation that happens over the next 10 to 15 years. It's certainly underway. The things that I'm actually really interested in, so that future role of compliance and insurance isn't particularly interesting to me because I'm a technologist. And I think other people do those things a lot better than I do. I'm really interested in the transformation of security practitioners and the fact that, like, you know, I kind of think of it as kind of like the Pinocchio syndrome. Like they want to be real people, right? They want to transition into real people. And so a lot of individual contributors in the security space are starting to use the tools that their colleagues in the other disciplines use. And so now Jupyter Notebooks, super popular tool that's used for data science. Like you see a lot of advertising people use it. You see a lot of different sorts of data scientists using it. 3 weeks ago, I think I saw one of the first Jupyter Notebook meetups for security professionals, right? So security professionals are starting to take a lot of these tools that other folks are using, and they're starting to leave the world of kind of like the specialized security data analysis tool, right? And for me, like, I think that the moment that we're transitioning to is the moment where data becomes kind of the be all end all, and it's sort of the center of the world when it comes to information technology. And essentially data is becoming the new endpoint, right? And so the things that wrap around the data, the way that you manipulate the data, I mean, these are all going to become phenomenally important. And things like, you know, desktop antivirus are going to kind of fall on the wayside as we kind of evolve into that new world.
Certainly, very interesting. You know, I'll kind of pose this one to the group. We've kind of hit on 3 interesting topics here. I think data science for security, the adoption of the cloud, and then I'll also throw another one in. I'll say open source code. So let's start with data science briefly. Maybe get a sense of maybe Sharon, how is data science from a traditional standpoint impacting the work of Checkpoint and making things better for us?
So we've been using data science or AI or whatever you want to call it, machine learning or AI or data science for years now. There's several products that are based on that, whether that's basic products like identifying malicious URLs to products that identify, as I mentioned, phishing websites, or products that would go after the trace of an attack, like find out how it started, when was the malicious initial malicious website, command and control website was started, and how is the attack move forward. So it's been it has been leveraged for I would say for the last 6-7 years, and what you find is what everybody finds. There's no magic in this. Initially, you gain quick progress, but then it takes a lot of time and small changes in order to achieve the value, and it would bring you nice results. It it can show you how to identify, as I said, phishing websites very nicely, but there's a lot more to do in this area and in our insecurity wise.
Certainly. Now, Eric, tell us a little bit about you know, how do you see the role of AI and machine learning in the protection of the enterprise?
In a way, again, those tools are very important for us, and we've got some part of our security ecosystem, part of AI and machine learning. That's what we are using. But it's not the essence of our work. The essence is to build a trust, security, digital trust. This is digital trust. This is what we need to build internally, but also with our customer. So speaking about technology here, I'm sorry for that, William, but I don't want to dig into it. I do prefer maybe to speak about how can we improve our cybersecurity when it comes to leveraging security with our customer.
Great.
To speak with the big and the highest standard in cybersecurity. For sure, internally, we should have compliance to introduce a new tools. We've got this. We've got compliance, and we've got all validation of all new tools, because it has to be integrated. We need to connect with our single sign-on technology. We need to connect with our Wi-Fi integration. We need to connect with everything. So adding a new technology is not easy. But connecting and ensuring digital trust with the customer is not easy neither, and it's giving added value. So I'm much focused on the added value cybersecurity can give, and as a CISO, I'm here to give added value to the company. And for instance, when we are ensuring that our equipment, that our products have got a certification, that we've got an end-to-end approach, that every piece of the puzzle are very secure, I'm happy. And that's what we want to do here, to have more end-to-end cybersecurity approach internally, but also with our customer, with connection with top tools, but also processes and people are key, and we need to endorse that, and we need to leverage to enhance the level of security of the ecosystem. If I'm better internally, if I work with my customer, that will be better also based on security, we are going to protect the world, and that's what we need to do here.
Great. Yeah, we have spoken a little bit, Eric, you and I, about this idea that security isn't an end in itself. It's almost a business enabler, and it has to be tied directly to the business activities. This is kind of what you're saying, right?
Exactly, yes.
Great, great, wonderful. So, Joel, I'll let you kind of take it away. I'd love to hear about cloud right now. Just in the little bit of time we have left, we all know that we're seeing increased cloud adoption by nature of the technology being so effective, but we're also seeing security challenges, especially with work from home and the shift to digitization that we're speaking about today. So tell us a little bit about, you know, how you see cloud and how you approach new and interesting technologies in that space when evaluating them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think the interesting thing that's happening on the security side with cloud is that most of the issues we have with it are how we configure it, right? And so it's the case of where settings drift from where we originally intended those settings to be. And, you know, we've seen some of sort of the most sophisticated cloud forward organizations make very public mistakes in the way that they configure these things that lead to breaches and then negative PR. And so I'd like to sort of start off with the observation that, like, we're finally getting to a place where configurations actually matter, and there isn't some like remote exploit override key that just blows away your configurations for the most part when it comes to cloud. And so now we can really actually focus on what, you know, is essentially a change control problem and managing change in a very dynamic environment. And so the technologies that are emerging that are really interesting are things that give you kind of a horizontal control plane across your cloud infrastructure. So it's fairly straightforward to secure your environment when you're using a handful of SaaS services and maybe one large cloud service provider. When you start to build multi-cloud applications, you're running in Google and Amazon and in Microsoft, and you've got kind of this very complex code base that's deployed out there, and you've got networking challenges between the two. You want to start to come out with tools that let you sort of manage consistently across that kind of a platform to make sure that the way that you're managing your Amazon AWS enterprise is the same as your Microsoft Azure deployment. And then you layer in SaaS and all the different services, right? Whether it's Box or Salesforce or Office 365, making sure that you don't let your employees like share documents publicly. right? Not actually doing the enforcement in the cloud service, because that's for the cloud services to do, but sitting on top and making sure that bit never gets flipped. And so those are the kinds of things that are interesting, because essentially you have to make sure that you maintain a parity of control across all of that infrastructure. And today, like, we haven't seen a whole lot of companies that have enough complex cloud deployments to really drive a large market there. But I've often felt that, like, that's going to probably be an area where there's a lot of interest and a lot of traction. You'll start to see it sort of take off as cloud starts to proliferate. So that's particularly interesting. I think the other thing that's really interesting is the extent to which cloud service providers want to do security for you. I think that they've, you know, when you're a software vendor and you're selling code to people and they take your code and go run it in their infrastructure, it's a situation where it's kind of on them if something goes wrong. In the instance where you're a cloud service provider and you're holding people's data, like, liability becomes a very real issue. And so you're economically incentivized to do security well, or pay for it later in some kind of painful litigation. And so the cloud service providers are actually rolling out a lot of interesting security tools. They want to do more security. You know, I think that they're giving out a baseline set of capabilities, right? They patch all of their infrastructure for you for the most part, right? Obviously, there's some nuances to that. Or they make sure that they maintain the consistency and configuration of their data centers, right? Like, they're taking on a lot of the stuff that our teams used to have to do. And it actually frees, I think, security professionals up to tackle the interesting problems, right? The issues of risk, making very conscious decisions about whether we want to do those sorts of things. And that's, I guess, the most interesting thing to me, is that over time, we'll see security become an equal business partner in the way that they operate the organization, and less of kind of a back office-y, like, hiding in the darkened basement kind of thing, which is generally what I hope for the profession and where I think things will head.
And as you see that liability get transferred, are you seeing conversations take place amongst the insurance industry for how that impacts liability?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for any CISO that is going through the process of evaluating cloud service providers, I think the lengthiest discussion they're going to have is around liability and limits of liability and the liability that the cloud service provider will accept. You know, I think that the insurance companies are definitely there. They're writing policies. There's all sorts of different ways that you can build tranches of policies to cover the risks and have waterfall situations for the way that your policies trigger. But I think we've yet to see these things materially play out in terms of how they pay out, what the standards are, what the risks are. Like, I think a lot of CISOs figure out that there's all these interesting contractual riders in the fine print in these policies. And, you know, it's pretty common for a cyber insurance policy to not cover you if you're hacked by a state actor or a nation state, which is, like, you know, an interesting proposition to have for some of these things. And so I think, like, as we start to understand the way that these configurations need to be set, as we start to define better frameworks, we'll also start to get common language on the insurance side, and we'll start to have products that look more consistent from vendor to vendor and sort of have more, you know, it'll become like every other insurance area and discipline where we've got actuarial tables and we understand the risk and we can effectively reinsure it. I still think, you know, I think there's some work being done there, but we still have some ways to go.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we're coming up on the time. I have a final question to pose to the group, but I wanted to just put it out there for anyone who wanted to mention anything that they didn't quite get a chance to get across today. You know, it just sort of opened the floor for any questions or comments from the group. Anyone? No? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, please, Sharon.
Yeah, if I may to pick on Joel's I think very focused and right and correct points about cloud security. Just to add to this, if you can find a solution that not only horizontally supports you through Azure, AWS, and GCP and Alibaba, but also vertically between your on-prem security or your data center security to the cloud, and allow the same the same policies, then you're lacking in that regard. And just to add one note to this, the mistake you don't want to make in securing your public cloud environment is that you cannot copy paste your security posture from your on-prem and assume that it will work in the public cloud. If there's one thing that I can say about security in the cloud, and that would be the thing that I want to say.
Okay, great. All right. So, one question I'd like to pose to the group. You know, in the long run, security, cybersecurity, is it going to get better for us? Are we going to become more secure, or are we going to become less secure? Eric, we can start with you. Did you hear the question? I know you had a little disruption there.
Yes. It's okay for me. No issue. So, so always no. Does the world is going to be better secured or less secure? I think the risks are increasing for sure. We've got new attacks every day, and we spoke about those ransomwares previously. And the ransomware, the first pass is for sure the phishing. They are doing the phishing, or they're using some vulnerable software. So for sure, we are going in a more and more difficult time, and we need to be prepared to that. We need to be prepared to the big one, and cyber resilience is key for us. We need to be prepared to test our capabilities. We need to work on incident and crisis management. This is key, to train ourselves on this, because it won't be better. And going on what Joel has said previously, for sure, it's not only on the CISO's head or shoulders. We need to work with all the companies for this. And all the companies is responsible to do cybersecurity the good way. So when it comes, and I wanted to go on this, when it goes to cyber crisis management, we need to train. We need to train with our risk. Maybe a risk register could be good, and we need to test it at the limit with insurance, with communication, to have good scenarios, to do pen tests, to test how cyber resilient we are, because for sure all companies are facing big attacks and got big hard time in the following years. Yes, or months or weeks, I don't know.
Great. Sharon, wanna let us know what you think around the future? Are we headed for more security, less security?
For me, it's a quick answer. This is our business. Our business is to make the world more secure, and we're optimistic people, and therefore the answer, yes, it will be more secure, because we will find a way to make it more secure.
Great, good answer. Joel?
Yeah, no, definitely more secure, and I think we've made a lot of progress. And I think the most controversial thing you can say at a security conference is that things seem to be going well, and we're making good progress towards fixing a lot of big problems. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Well, I really appreciate all of your time today. We had quite a few people stay on the line with us, and we really appreciate all of their time as well. I hope everyone got a chance to learn something new. And for more content like this, you can follow up with us at SOSA. Looking forward to staying on the cybersecurity beat with everyone and staying in touch. Thanks, everyone. It's been a great session.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.